"What the hell are you doing?" he barks, his voice echoing in the vast room. "Get your hands off my son." The silence in Penthouse Suite 12 is the first thing you notice. It's a manufactured quiet, the kind that costs $10,000 a night. It's in the triple-paned glass that reduces the city's roar to a distant, theoretical hum. It's in the whisper of the climate control system, breathing conditioned air over acres of imported marble and hand-knotted silk rugs. It's a silence that announces wealth, a quiet so profound it feels heavier than sound. Maya Williams knows this silence intimately. It is the canvas against which she works, a constant reminder of her own invisibility. Her job is to move through this quiet without disturbing it, to erase any evidence of human life. A fingerprint on a chrome faucet, a stray hair on a velvet chaise, a crease in a 1,000-thread-count sheet. She is a ghost in the machine of luxury, her presence measured only by the perfection she leaves behind. Today, however, a sound pierces the stillness. It's small at first, a cough, then a gasp thin and sharp from the living area where the guest's 6-year-old son, Leo, plays with a fleet of wooden cars. Maya pauses, her hand hovering over a crystal vase, her senses instantly on high alert. 4 years of cleaning up after the world's elite has taught her to distinguish the sounds of life. This is not the sound of play. It is the sound of a struggle. She moves from the bedroom to the living area, her rubber-soled shoes making no noise on the polished floor. Leo is on his knees, his face turning a startling shade of plum. His small hands clutch at his throat, his eyes wide with a terror that has not yet found a voice. A small, hard piece of candy, a gift from the hotel's welcome basket, is lodged in his airway. For a heartbeat, the world shrinks to the space between them. The silent penthouse, the sprawling city below, the high-stakes deal Mr. Sterling is so obsessed with, it all evaporates. There is only a child who cannot breathe. Maya doesn't think, she acts. Her movements are a study in practiced efficiency. She drops to her knees behind him, her mind a calm, clear space amidst the rising panic in the room. Her years are filled with moments like this, not of choking, but of crisis. A burst pipe in a billionaire's bathroom, a shattered heirloom, a medical emergency whispered into a service phone. Her role was always the same. Stay calm, be invisible, fix what is broken. She wraps her arms around Leo's small, trembling torso, making a fist with one hand and placing it just above his navel. Her other hand covers the first. She remembers the CPR training the hotel mandated for all staff, a box checked on a corporate responsibility form that no one, least of all management, ever expected a maid to use. One upward thrust, sharp, controlled, Leo's body convulses nothing. Her heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the manufactured silence. She repositions her hands. Another thrust, firmer this time. A small, bright red candy shoots from his mouth and skitters across the marble floor, coming to rest near the leg of a sterile, modern sofa. Leo collapses against her, a series of ragged, wheezing sobs tearing from his chest. The color begins to flood back into his face. He's crying, but he's breathing. Maya holds him for a moment, her own breath catching in her throat, her hand gently rubbing his back. "It's okay," she whispers, the words absorbed by the thick, expensive air. "You're okay now." It is in this precise moment, a black woman in a plain gray uniform kneeling on the floor, holding a small, sobbing white child in a $5,000 sweater, that the door to the suite swings open. Leo's father, a man whose net worth is listed in magazines, stops dead. His eyes, accustomed to seeing the world as a series of assets to be acquired, fix on Maya's hands on his son. He doesn't see a rescue. He sees a transgression. "What the hell are you doing?" he barks, his voice echoing in the vast room. "Get your hands off my son." He lunges forward, yanking the child from her arms with a force that makes Maya flinch. The boy, already terrified, begins to wail louder, clinging to his father. "Sir, he was choking," Maya says, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "He couldn't breathe. The candy." "I don't care," the father snaps, his face a mask of fury and entitlement. "You don't touch him, do you understand me? You don't touch him." Just then Mr. Alistair Sterling, the hotel's owner, sweeps into the room, alerted by the commotion. He takes in the scene in a single, cold glance. The crying child, the furious guest, and the maid, kneeling on the floor out of her place. "Is there a problem here?" Sterling asks, his voice smooth as ice. "Your staff," the father says, pointing an accusatory finger at Maya, "put her hands on my son, in my suite. unsupervised. Sterling's gaze falls on Maya. There is no inquiry in his eyes, no question, only a swift and merciless judgment. He sees a problem to be managed, a liability to be contained. He sees a maid who has forgotten the cardinal rule of her profession: be invisible. She saved his life, Maya says, her voice quiet but firm, refusing to be erased from the truth of the moment. She gestures to the red candy still lying on the floor. He was choking on that. But the men aren't listening. They are already constructing a narrative that fits their worldview. Sterling places a placating hand on the guest's shoulder. "I am deeply sorry for this intrusion," he says, his tone dripping with practiced sincerity. "It will be handled immediately." He turns to Maya, his voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper that is somehow louder than the father's shouting. "Miss Williams, we have a very simple policy for our housekeeping staff. You are here to ensure the rooms are pristine. You are not here to interact with the guests. You are not here to play hero. Your job is to be unseen and unheard. Have I made myself clear?" She looks from his cold, dismissive face to the small boy still crying in his father's arms, the boy who was breathing because of her. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't need to. The silence of the penthouse, once a symbol of luxury, now feels like a tomb, a place where a good deed is buried under the suffocating weight of class and color. She simply nods, rises to her feet with a quiet dignity that neither man acknowledges, and walks back toward the bedroom to finish cleaning the suite. The invisible hand, now visible, is once again put back in its place. The reprimand doesn't end in the penthouse. It follows her down the service elevator, a cold shadow clinging to her shoulders. In the sterile, windowless staff corridor, Mr. Sterling corners her. His voice is a stiletto, sharp and precise, meant to leave a wound no one else can see. "Let me be exceptionally clear, Miss Williams," he says, his body language a fortress of bespoke tailoring and rigid posture. "The incident this morning was not just a breach of protocol. It was a threat to the reputation of this hotel. A guest's perception is reality. And the reality he perceived was chaos, incompetence, and a maid who forgot her place. That will not happen again." Maya keeps her eyes fixed on a point just past his shoulder. She has learned that direct eye contact is seen as a challenge, while looking down is seen as submission. This neutral middle ground is the safest place to exist. "Yes, sir," she says, her voice a flat, calm surface. Inside, her heart is a different story. It's a hornet's nest of fury and frustration. She saved a child. She acted when no one else was there to act, and for that she is being punished. The injustice of it is a familiar, bitter taste in her mouth. But she knows, with a certainty forged in a lifetime of similar moments, that her truth does not matter here. Her role is to absorb, to endure, and to disappear back into the background. An hour later, the tension in the hotel has a new name: Prince Khalid Al Fahad. An emergency all-staff meeting is called in the main ballroom service annex, a gray, fluorescent-lit space that smells of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. It is the hotel's underbelly, a world away from the fragrant lobbies and sun-drenched suites. Mr. Sterling stands before his department heads, his face taut with a mixture of ambition and terror. "In 3 hours," he begins, his voice tight, "Prince Khalid and his delegation will arrive. His investment group, Althuria Global, is considering a $500 million buyout of the Sterling Grand Hospitality brand." He lets that number hang in the air, a sword of Damocles over their heads. This is not a VIP visit. This is the future of this hotel. Every single detail must be beyond perfect. Any mistake, however minor, will be considered a personal failure, and I do not tolerate failure. His eyes scan the room, lingering on each face. The head chef, the concierge, the head of security, they all stand a little straighter, their expressions grim. Maya is not in this meeting, of course. She is on her hands and knees in the ballroom, polishing the baseboards, but the service door is propped open. She hears every word. "To ensure flawless communication," Sterling continues, "I have retained the services of Mr. Julian Croft." He gestures to a man standing beside him, a man who seems to have been assembled from a catalog of European luxury. His suit is sharp, his watch is heavy, and his smile is thin and condescending. Mr. Croft is a graduate of Cambridge and has served as a cultural liaison for dozens of Fortune 500 companies, Sterling boasts. Croft steps forward and offers a curt nod. "I trust you will all defer to my expertise in all matters of culture and language," he says, his accent clipped and precise. To demonstrate, he utters a short phrase in Arabic. It is grammatically correct, but the pronunciation is stiff, the cadence academic. It is the Arabic of a textbook, not of a person. Maya pauses her polishing, a small frown touching her lips. The phrase is a formal welcome, but the dialect is Egyptian, not the Najdi Arabic spoken by the Saudi royal court. It's a small thing, a nuance no one here would ever notice. But to the prince, it could sound like a clumsy, ill-informed affectation. It is the first sign of a crack in Sterling's carefully constructed facade of perfection. The meeting adjourns, and a frantic energy overtakes the staff. Sterling and Croft stride through the lobby, barking orders. Maya finishes her work and moves to the executive conference room, her cart gliding silently behind her. The room is a mess of discarded papers and half-empty coffee cups from Sterling's earlier meeting. Her job is to make it look as if no one was ever there. As she empties a recycling bin, a sheet of heavy, cream-colored paper catches her eye. It's a mock-up of the welcome packet for the prince's suite. At the top, in elegant, flowing calligraphy, is the same Arabic phrase Croft spoke earlier. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome. But beneath it, the honorific used to address the prince is wrong. They've used Sayyid, which means Mr. or Sir, a term of respect, yes, but not for royalty. For a prince, the correct term would be Sumuwukum, Your Highness. It is an error born of ignorance, the kind of mistake that happens when you value the appearance of cultural respect over the substance of it. Maya runs her finger over the beautiful, incorrect script. Without thinking, she whispers the correct phrasing under her breath. Ahlan wa sahlan, ya sahiba al-sumo. Welcome, Your Royal Highness. The words flow from her effortlessly, the vowels soft, the consonants carrying the gentle authority of a native speaker. What was that? Maya jumps, startled. Ben, a young bellhop with kind eyes and a perpetually nervous energy, is standing by the door, a tray of empty water glasses in his hands. He's the only one who ever makes eye contact with her, the only one who asks how her day is going. Nothing, she says quickly, dropping the paper back into the bin. Just talking to myself. Ben frowns, looking from her to the discarded paper. He didn't understand the words she spoke, but he heard the music in them. It sounded nothing like the stiff, awkward phrase the expensive translator had used. It sounded real. He looks at Maya, at her plain gray uniform, at the smudge of polish on her cheek, at the quiet intelligence in her eyes that everyone else seems to miss. He doesn't say anything more. He just gives a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of a secret he doesn't yet understand, and backs out of the room. But as he walks down the long, silent corridor, he can't shake the feeling that the most qualified person in the Sterling Grand Hotel might not be the one giving the orders, but the one cleaning up after them. At precisely 2:59 p.m., a hush falls over the grand lobby of the Sterling Grand. It is a choreographed silence, a collective intake of breath from every staff member frozen at their post. The concierge's hands are clasped, his smile fixed. The valets stand like statues by the towering glass doors. Even the light seems to hold still, the sunbeams slanting through the atrium arrested in mid-air. Mr. Sterling stands at the center of it all, a general surveying his troops before the most important battle of his career. He adjusts his cufflinks, a nervous tick disguised as a gesture of confidence. Beside him, Julian Croft, the translator, looks bored, as if this display of anticipatory reverence is something he has witnessed 1,000 times before. Maya is stationed near the grand staircase, her ostensible task to polish the already gleaming brass railing. From this vantage point, she is a part of the architecture, a feature of the background, and she can see everything. She watches Sterling's jaw tighten, sees the flicker of panic in the assistant manager's eyes. She understands that this performance is not for the prince's benefit, but for Sterling's. It is a ritual to ward off the terrifying possibility of chaos. At 3:00 p.m. on the dot, a fleet of obsidian black sedans glides to a silent stop at the curb. The doors open in unison. Security personnel, all sharp angles and dark sunglasses, emerge first, their movements fluid and economical as they scan the perimeter. Then, from the lead car, Prince Khalid Al Fahad steps out. He is not a man who commands attention with loudness or dramatic gestures. His power is a quieter, more profound force. He is tall and elegant, with a neatly trimmed beard just starting to show threads of silver. He wears a traditional thobe of the finest white linen, its simplicity a stark contrast to the corporate armor of Sterling's suit. But it is his eyes that hold the room captive. They are the eyes of a man who has sat in 1,000 boardrooms, listened to 1,000 pitches, and has learned to discern truth from performance with weary precision. Sterling surges forward, his smile a perfect polished veneer. "Your Highness," he booms, his voice a little too loud in the reverent quiet, "on behalf of the Sterling Grand, it is my profound honor to welcome you." Julian Croft steps up, clearing his throat. He recites his formal, textbook greeting in Egyptian Arabic. "Alan wa salan bikum fi funjukina, yasadat al-amir." The prince offers a brief, regal nod. His gaze sweeps the cavernous lobby, taking in the soaring marble columns, the massive crystal chandelier, the staff standing at rigid attention. There is no warmth in the opulence, no life in the perfection. It is a beautiful, sterile cage. As the entourage begins to move toward the elevators, the prince leans toward his closest aide, a man of his own age with a calm, watchful face. He speaks in a low murmur, his Najdi dialect soft and flowing, a world away from Croft's stiff recitation. "Hal al-Rukam Akthar Diffin Min al-Tarhib," he says. "The marble has more warmth than the welcome." The words are a quiet, poetic critique, a devastating summary of the hotel's soulless grandeur. They are meant only for his aid, a private observation shared in the confidence of their native tongue. Sterling and Croft, walking several paces ahead, hear nothing but an indecipherable murmur. They are already congratulating themselves on a flawless reception, but Maya hears. Her hand stills on the brass railing. The cloth in her fingers goes limp. The prince and his aide are walking directly past her, so close she can smell the faint, expensive scent of oud on his thobe. She keeps her head down, her eyes fixed on the intricate pattern of the railing, but her ears have caught the truth. She understands not just the words, but the weariness behind them. This is a man who is tired of being sold to, of being managed, of being presented with a flawless, cold performance. He is looking for something real. Her gaze lifts, almost involuntarily, and finds Ben standing across the lobby by the elevator bank. He is not looking at the prince or at the beaming Mr. Sterling. He is looking at her. He saw her subtle reaction in the conference room when she found the flawed welcome note. He is watching her now, a question in his eyes. "Did you hear that? Did it mean something?" Maya meets his gaze across the vast, polished expanse. The world of wealth and power, of princes and billionaires, fades away for a single, charged second. In its place is a silent, shared understanding between two people at the bottom of the hierarchy who see the truth that everyone at the top is missing. She gives him the smallest, most imperceptible of nods. The elevator doors open with a soft chime. The prince and his delegation step inside, their reflections momentarily captured in the mirrored walls before disappearing. The doors slide shut, sealing them in a capsule of gold and glass, carrying them and the hotel's $500 million future upward. Mr. Sterling turns to his team, his face flushed with triumph. "Perfect," he mouths, clapping Croft on the shoulder. "Absolutely perfect." He is blissfully unaware that the foundation of his perfect welcome has already cracked. Only Maya and the young bellhop, standing on opposite sides of the empty lobby, know that the most important conversation has already happened, and it was one that no one in power even heard. The grand tour of the Sterling Grand is a masterclass in performative hospitality. Sterling leads the prince through a series of immaculately curated experiences designed to overwhelm the senses with the sheer force of their expense. They visit the subterranean spa, where the air is thick with the scent of eucalyptus and the sound of trickling water over imported river stones. They walk through the Michelin-starred restaurant, where the head chef presents a single, perfect scallop on a mother-of-pearl spoon as if it were a crown jewel. Each space is a testament to Sterling's obsession with control, every element polished to a sterile, impersonal sheen. Prince Khalid moves through it all with a detached, regal grace. He nods politely, murmurs appreciative but non-committal phrases that Julian Croft dutifully translates, and maintains an unreadable expression. He is a man being shown a beautiful, intricate cage, and he remains unimpressed by the quality of its bars. Maya trails them at a distance, her cleaning cart a shield of invisibility. Her official task is to follow the tour and ensure that any space the delegation leaves is instantly returned to its pristine state. Her real task, she is beginning to understand, is to watch and to listen. The tour culminates in the Zenith Lounge, a rooftop bar on the 80th floor with panoramic windows that offer a god's-eye view of the city. Below them, the urban grid sprawls out, a tapestry of steel, glass, and history. It is here that the prince finally shows a spark of genuine interest. His gaze bypasses the modern skyscrapers and settles on a cluster of older, more elegant buildings in the district to the east. "The architecture there," the prince says, his voice carrying a note of intellectual curiosity. He turns from the window. "It is from the American Art Deco period, is it not? The geometric motifs on the cornices remind me of the Al Yamama Palace in Riyadh, a similar fusion of local tradition and international style. Who was the chief architect for that district?" I understand many of the most influential designers of that era were often overlooked in historical records. The question is specific, cultured, and deeply personal. It is not a test of the hotel's amenities, but of its soul, its connection to the city it inhabits. A dead silence hangs in the air. Sterling looks to Croft, his eyes wide with expectation. Julian Croft panics. It's a subtle, internal combustion, but Maya sees it in the slight stiffening of his shoulders, the way his gaze darts around the room as if searching for an answer on the walls. Art Deco architects. This is not in the corporate briefing packet. He clears his throat, stalling for time. "Ah, yes, Your Highness," Croft begins, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "That is indeed the historic district. A very important contribution to the city's heritage. It was designed by a consortium of the city's most prominent architectural firms of the 1930s. The answer is a masterpiece of empty corporate jargon. It is a word salad tossed with vagaries and served with a dressing of condescension. The prince's brief flicker of interest is extinguished. A mask of polite disappointment slides back over his features. He gives a single, curt nod and turns back to the window, the conversation clearly over. Sterling's smile tightens. He can feel the shift, the cooling of the room's emotional temperature. He shoots a venomous glare at Croft, who suddenly finds the pattern of the carpet intensely fascinating. Maya, standing in the service pantry just off the main lounge, heard the entire exchange. And unlike Croft, she knows the answer. The name flashes in her mind, a relic from a life she thought she'd left behind. A life of libraries, of late-night study sessions, of a passionate art history professor who believed architecture was the autobiography of a culture. Elara Vance. A woman. A brilliant, visionary architect who designed half of that district, but was consistently denied credit in favor of her male partners. Her story was a footnote in the history books, a detail most would miss. But Maya had written an entire paper on her. She knew the motifs the prince referenced, knew the specific type of limestone Vance imported, knew the quiet, revolutionary story of a woman who built monuments in a world that tried to make her invisible. She cannot speak. To do so would be to shatter the invisible wall that separates her world from theirs. But she can act. Her eyes dart around the pantry. She finds a small, Sterling-branded notepad and a pen. Her handwriting is a neat, clean script. She doesn't write a paragraph. She writes 3 simple words: Architect Elara Vance. She folds the note into a tiny, tight square. She walks out of the pantry, her face a mask of professional blankness, and heads toward the service corridor. She sees Ben coming the other way, a stack of fresh linen in his arms. Their eyes meet. There is no time for words. She presses the folded note into his hand, her gaze conveying the urgency. "Get this to them. Now." Ben doesn't hesitate. He saw the prince's disappointment. He trusts Maya's instincts more than he trusts anyone in a suit. He nods once, tucks the note into his palm, and changes course. He doesn't go to Sterling or the pompous translator. He approaches Sterling's junior assistant, a young man named Mark who is less jaded than the rest of the executive team. "Excuse me, sir," Ben says, his voice low. "I couldn't help but overhear. I think this might be the name the prince was asking about." He offers the note. Mark, desperate to fix Croft's blunder, takes it without question. He unfolds it, reads the name, and his eyes widen. He hurries over to Sterling. "Sir, a quick point of clarification from our research team," he whispers, passing him the note. Sterling glances at it, his expression shifting from anger to relief, then to triumph. He sees his opening. He steps back to the prince's side. "Your Highness, my apologies," Sterling says smoothly. "My associate was mistaken. The lead architect you were inquiring about was, in fact, a woman named Alara Vance, a true visionary tragically overlooked. We have a small folio on her work in the hotel's library if you are interested." The prince turns from the window, genuine surprise and pleasure dawning on his face. "Alara Vance," he repeats, tasting the name. "Yes, I have read of her. Remarkable. I would be very interested to see that folio." The mood in the room lifts. The prince engages Sterling in a brief but animated conversation, his earlier coolness replaced by a newfound respect. The deal, which had been teetering on the edge of a cliff of cultural ignorance, is pulled back to safety. As the tour moves on, Sterling claps his assistant on the back. "Mark, excellent work. That's the kind of quick, proactive thinking I like to see. You saved us there." Across the lounge, Meyer is wiping down the table where the prince had stood, erasing the faint ring of condensation from his water glass. She is invisible again. She catches Ben's eye as he returns from his mission. He gives a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head, his expression a mixture of awe and frustration. They are the only two people in the room who know the truth. A small victory has been won, but the credit, like everything else in this place, belongs to the men in charge. The private dinner is held in the hotel's Onyx Room, a space so exclusive it doesn't appear on any of the public floor plans. The walls are paneled in dark, polished wood. The table is a single, massive slab of obsidian, and the only light comes from a constellation of tiny, recessed ceiling lamps that mimics the night sky. The air is still and cool, thick with the scent of money and old wine. An army of waiters moves with the silent, synchronized grace of a ballet corps, their reflections gliding like ghosts across the dark surfaces. The meal is an ostentatious parade of Sterling's ambition. Each course is more elaborate than the last. Consommes served in delicate porcelain cups, seafood towers glistening under the soft light, and rare cuts of meat presented with flourishes of smoke and foam. Julian Croft sits near the head of the table, providing a running commentary that is less a translation and more an auctioneer's pitch. "The wine, Your Highness, is a 1982 Bordeaux, exceptionally rare," he announces, as if the prince couldn't read the label himself. "And the truffles have been flown in this morning from Alba." Prince Khalid smiles politely, but his eyes remain distant. He engages in the necessary small talk, but Maya, refilling his water glass with a practiced, invisible motion, can see the boredom settling in his posture. He is being served things, not being seen. The conversation had been brief, a fleeting detail shared between the prince's assistant and a concierge upon their arrival. A list of preferences, travel notes, and, tucked among them, a crucial piece of medical information. One of the younger aides in the delegation, a quiet man named Faisal, has a severe anaphylactic allergy to all tree nuts. This information was passed to Croft, who, in his arrogance, had glanced at the list and deemed it a simple culinary matter for the kitchen to handle, failing to communicate its life or death importance to the entire service team. As the third course is brought out, Maya's breath catches. The dish is a pan-seared sea bass, a beautiful creation resting on a bed of saffron risotto. But sprinkled delicately over the top, serving as both a garnish and a textural counterpoint, is a dusting of bright green, crushed pistachios. It's an artist's touch, a chef's flourish, and a potential death sentence. She sees the plate making its way down the table, carried by the head waiter, a stern Frenchman named Jean-Pierre. It is heading directly for Faisal. Maya's mind races. The protocol is clear. She is not to speak unless spoken to. Her job is to be a phantom, a pair of hands that fills glasses and clears plates. To interfere is to break the cardinal rules Sterling laid down for her that morning. It is to make herself visible again, to risk her job. But then her gaze falls on Faisal's face. He is young, maybe 25, with the same kind of earnest, hopeful eyes she sees in Ben. He is laughing at a joke one of his colleagues made, completely unaware of the danger being placed before him. In that instant, the choice is not a choice at all. Her heart pounding, Maya moves with a swift, quiet urgency that is born of instinct, not instruction. She intercepts Jean-Pierre just as he is about to lower the plate. She leans in close, her voice a low, urgent whisper in his ear, shielded from the table by the angle of her body. "Sir," she murmurs in English, her tone respectful but firm. "The garnish on the sea base. It's pistachio. The gentleman in the blue tie, he has a severe nut allergy." Jean-Pierre's initial reaction is a flash of pure annoyance. His eyes narrow, his lips thinning into a hard line at this shocking breach of protocol. He starts to wave her away, but something in the sheer, unadulterated certainty in her voice stops him. He glances at the plate, then at Faisal, and a wave of dawning horror washes over his face. He understands. The recovery is seamless. With a professionalism that is almost breathtaking, Jean-Pierre retracts the plate without a word. "My apologies, sir," he says smoothly to Faisal. "The chef has sent an alternative preparation for you." He signals to a junior waiter who whisks the dangerous plate away and replaces it with another, identical in every way except for the missing garnish. The entire incident takes less than 5 seconds. Sterling doesn't notice. The prince, deep in conversation, is oblivious. Faisal simply looks surprised, then offers a grateful nod, assuming it was a planned accommodation. The crisis is averted so silently it almost never happened. But someone did see. At the far end of the room, standing discreetly by a service door, is Tariq, the prince's head of security. He is a man built of stillness and observation, his job to see the details everyone else misses. He saw Maya's urgent whisper. He saw the plate being switched. He saw the flicker of fear in Jean-Pierre's eyes, and he understands precisely what she just did. 10 minutes later, in the clatter and heat of the service corridor, Jean-Pierre corners Maya. There is no gratitude in his eyes, only the cold fury of a man whose authority has been challenged. "You will never," he hisses, his voice low and trembling with rage, "do that again. You are to see nothing, hear nothing, and say nothing. Your opinion is not required. Your observations are not welcome. Your job is to pour water. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Maya says, her voice betraying no emotion. She has just saved a man's life, and she is being reprimanded like a child who has spilled juice on a rug. She gives a small, respectful nod and turns to walk away. As she does, her eyes meet Tariq's. He is standing at the end of the long corridor, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He had witnessed the entire exchange in the dining room, and he has just witnessed her silent, dignified acceptance of this unjust rebuke. He doesn't smile. He doesn't speak. But as she walks past him, he gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. It is a gesture of profound professional respect from one guardian to another. He has just identified the single most effective person on the hotel's staff, and it is the invisible woman everyone else sees right through. The next day, a fragile, temporary peace settles over the Sterling Grand, the kind of quiet that feels less like calm and more like the held breath before a storm. The preliminary negotiations have begun in the main boardroom, and the entire hotel operates under a cloud of anxious tension. Staff members communicate in hushed tones, their movements clipped and careful, as if a single dropped plate or loud laugh could shatter the delicate financial ecosystem being debated behind closed doors. Maya moves through her duties with her usual quiet efficiency, but she is a tuning fork, resonating with the nervous energy that hums through the building's walls. She sees it in the way Sterling's assistant rushes past, his face pale and slick with sweat. She hears it in the frantic, whispered phone calls from the finance department. She feels it in the oppressive silence that falls whenever the boardroom door opens. Ben finds her in the linen closet, folding napkins into perfect, crisp squares. He leans against the doorframe, his young face etched with worry. "It's not going well," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "I brought a tray of coffee in, and it was ice cold. Not the coffee, the room. The prince's team just sits there, listening. They don't react. And Mr. Sterling looks like he's about to explode." "What are they talking about?" Maya asks, her hands never stopping their methodical folding. "Return on investment, 5-year projections," Ben says. But every time Mr. Croft translates a number, one of the Saudi aides writes something down and passes a note to the prince. The prince reads it and his face gets a little tighter. Maya nods slowly. She understands. Croft is likely making a common translator's mistake, a direct, literal translation of financial terms without providing the necessary cultural or market context. To the Saudis, the numbers might seem baseless or overly aggressive without the framework of understanding they are accustomed to. He isn't just miscommunicating, he is breeding mistrust. "Thank you, Ben," she says softly. He gives her a helpless look and disappears back into the hallway. An hour later, the boardroom door flies open, and Sterling storms out, his face a thundercloud of controlled rage. Julian Croft scrambles after him, his usual air of smug superiority replaced by a sheen of nervous perspiration. Sterling doesn't stop until he reaches a secluded service alcove near the emergency exit, a gray, anonymous space of exposed pipes and concrete floors. He spins on Croft, his voice a low, vicious snarl. "What in God's name is going on in there, Julian? I'm paying you more for 2 days' work than most of my staff make in a year, and you are letting a $500 million deal die on the table." Maya is in an adjacent utility closet, restocking her cart. The door is propped open an inch. She freezes, becoming part of the shadows. "They're not responding to anything," Sterling seethes. "It's like I'm pitching to a wall of statues. Are you even telling them what I'm saying?" Croft, cornered, deploys the last refuge of the incompetent. He blames the tools, not the craftsmen. "Alistair, you have to understand," he says, his voice regaining a slippery academic authority. "This isn't standard formal Arabic. We're dealing with a highly specific antiquated Bedouin court dialect." Maya's hands clench around a bottle of glass cleaner. Bedouin court dialect. The lie is so audacious, so cynically brilliant, she almost gasps. It's a complete fabrication. Najdi Arabic, the dialect of the Saudi royal court, is formal and poetic, but it is the modern language of business and governance. Croft has invented a phantom to hide his own failure. "It's intensely idiomatic," Croft continues, warming to his fiction. "Full of metaphors and historical allusions that have no direct Western equivalent. It's less a language and more a cultural code. My translations are accurate, but the dialect itself is elusive. It's designed to be exclusionary." Sterling, who knows nothing about Arabic but everything about hierarchies and exclusive codes of power, latches onto the explanation. It makes sense to him. It is an excuse that keeps his own judgment in hiring Croft from being called into question. "So, what you're saying is, they're making it intentionally difficult?" Sterling asks, the rage in his voice slowly being replaced by a sense of being outmaneuvered. "Precisely," Croft says, seizing the advantage. "We're not just dealing with a language barrier, it's a cultural fortress. My recommendation is to simplify. We remove the complex financial models. We focus on broad strokes. Essentially," he adds with a dismissive wave of his hand, "we have to dumb it down for them." Maya has to press her lips together to keep from making a sound. Dumb it down. For a delegation led by a man with a master's degree from the London School of Economics. It is the single worst strategy imaginable. It is not just tactically wrong, it is profoundly insulting. Sterling nods, his mind already churning. "Simplify, right, broad strokes. Get the finance team on it. I want a new presentation, a simpler one, ready in an hour." He turns and strides away, a man who believes he has found a solution when in fact he has just armed his enemy. Croft watches him go, a look of smug relief on his face. He has saved his reputation and his paycheck. He turns, and for a terrifying second, his eyes sweep over the utility closet. Maya flattens herself against the shelves, her heart hammering. He doesn't see her. He smooths his tie, straightens his jacket, and walks back toward the lobby, a charlatan who has successfully diagnosed the patient with a rare disease that only he can pretend to treat. Maya stays in the shadows long after he is gone. The lie hangs in the air, toxic and heavy. She now holds a dangerous piece of knowledge. She knows the foundation of Sterling's strategy is a fiction. She knows that the next phase of negotiations is destined to be not just a failure but an insult. The storm is no longer approaching. It is here, and she is standing at its quiet, silent center. The morning of the final signing dawns with a deceptive calm. A cool, clean light washes over the city, and inside the Sterling Grand, The frantic energy of the past few days has been replaced by a quiet, focused hum. Sterling's new, simplified strategy is in place. The boardroom is being set for the ceremony, with fresh flowers, chilled water, and a row of handsome leather-bound folders containing the final contract. From the outside, it looks like a company in complete control, poised for a historic victory. Sterling himself seems to have regained his footing. He strides through the lobby, his confidence restored by Croft's fabricated explanation. He believes he now understands the game. The prince's team requires a simpler, more direct approach. He sees their earlier coolness not as a reaction to incompetence, but as a negotiating tactic he has successfully decoded. He is a man walking confidently toward the edge of a cliff, convinced it is a bridge. Maya, however, feels the truth in the air. It is a low-frequency hum of impending disaster that only she can hear. She watches the preparations with a sense of detached dread, polishing surfaces that are already spotless, a ghost drifting through the final act of a tragedy she is powerless to stop. It is Ben who brings her the weapon. He finds her in the hotel's rooftop greenhouse, a quiet, sunlit space where the chefs grow herbs and the staff sometimes comes for a moment of peace. She is tending to a row of wilting orchids, her touch gentle and restorative. Ben approaches her, his usual nervous energy replaced by a grim sense of purpose. In his hand is one of the leather-bound folders. "I found this," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "It was left on a table in the lounge after Mr. Sterling's prep meeting. I was supposed to take it to the shredder bin." He holds it out to her. "But I thought you should see it first." Maya wipes her hands on her apron and takes the folder. The leather is cool and smooth beneath her fingertips. The front is embossed with the hotel's logo and the words Project Althuria, Final Agreement. Her heart gives a slow, heavy thud. This is not a draft. This is the script for the final performance. She opens it. Her eyes, accustomed to scanning for smudges and imperfections on physical surfaces, now scan for something far more dangerous. The bulk of the contract is in English, a dense forest of legal terminology. Her mind, long relegated to the simple calculus of cleaning supplies and room schedules, shifts gears. The muscle memory of her education, of late nights spent dissecting international trade law, kicks in. She is no longer a maid. She is an analyst. She reads through the main clauses, investment terms, profit-sharing models, management structures. It all seems standard if a bit aggressive on the prince's side. Sterling is clearly giving up more than he should, a concession born of his desperation. But there is no obvious poison here. Then she finds it. It's a single sentence, tucked away deep in the miscellaneous clauses section, Clause 23b. It reads, "All supplementary materials and addenda to be provided in their original language of drafting shall be considered legally binding and shall supersede any conflicting terms within this primary document." The language is dry, technical, designed to be overlooked, but to Maya it blazes like a signal flare. It's a Trojan horse clause, a legal backdoor. Her eyes fly to the final page, the signature page, scanning the fine print. And there it is. A small, innocuous-looking footnote. See Addendum A, Covenant of Regional Heritage Partnership, to be provided in Arabic at signing. A cold dread, sharp and absolute, crystallizes in her chest. She knows this structure, Covenant of Regional Heritage Partnership. It sounds benevolent, collaborative, ceremonial. She has seen clauses like this before in her case studies. It is a specific, culturally coded legal instrument often used in Gulf state business law. If translated literally by an amateur, it would seem like a simple promise to respect local traditions. But she knows what it really is. In its proper context, it is a poison pill. It's a sweeping non-compete clause, not just for the hotel, but for any future venture Sterling or his partners might undertake in the entire Gulf region. It would effectively lock him out of one of the fastest-growing luxury markets in the world. It's not a partnership agreement, it's a corporate strangulation. The pieces slam into place with brutal clarity. The prince and his team aren't trying to trick Sterling. They are testing him. They have inserted this complex, culturally specific clause into the deal expecting Sterling's team to be competent enough to identify it, analyze it, and negotiate it. It is a final, sophisticated test of their global business acumen. And Julian Croft, with his Bedouin court dialect and his strategy to dumb it down, is about to fail that test in the most spectacular way possible. He will glance at the Arabic, see the word heritage, and dismiss it as a cultural formality. He will advise Sterling to sign. Maya looks up from the pages, her face ashen. She looks at Ben, who is watching her, his own fear mirroring the dread in her eyes. "This isn't a deal," she says, her voice low and steady, though the world is tilting beneath her feet. "It's an execution." She closes the folder. The silence in the sun-drenched greenhouse is absolute. Outside the glass walls, the city continues its business, unaware of the corporate drama playing out in the hotel's highest floors. The final meeting is scheduled to begin in less than an hour. Meyer is holding the evidence of a multi-million-dollar trap in her hands, and she is the only person in the building who knows it. The executive boardroom feels like a cathedral of commerce. Sunlight streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the fine dust motes dancing in the air and glinting off the polished obsidian of the long conference table. The mood is one of triumphant finality. The scent of expensive leather and sterling self-satisfaction hangs heavy in the air. He is a man who has wrestled a giant and believes he has won. Maya stands in the back of the room by a marble credenza, tasked with keeping water glasses filled. From this vantage point, she is just another part of the room's silent, efficient machinery. But her heart is a frantic, trapped bird, beating against the cage of her ribs. She holds the terrible knowledge of the contract like a physical weight, and she can do nothing but watch as the final pieces of the trap are laid. The main contract, a thick sheaf of paper detailing the $500 million investment, is passed around the table. Sterling signs his name with a confident, theatrical flourish, the nib of his custom Mont Blanc scratching loudly in the quiet room. Prince Khalid signs with a calm, deliberate motion, his expression unreadable. The exchange of folders is smooth, practiced, the polite ritual of men who move mountains with the stroke of a pen. And that, Sterling announces, beaming at his team, concludes the primary agreement, a historic partnership. He is already mentally drafting the press release, envisioning the headlines. It is then that the prince's chief legal counsel, a stern, hawk-faced man named Mr. Adnan, steps forward. He places a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored paper in the center of the table. It is covered in the elegant, intricate dance of Arabic calligraphy. As noted in Clause 23b, Mr. Adnan says in precise, formal English, we have addendum A, the covenant of regional heritage partnership. A ripple of performative interest passes through Sterling's team. All eyes, however, turn to Julian Croft, the designated oracle, the man paid a fortune to interpret the mysteries of a foreign tongue. Croft leans forward with an air of theatrical nonchalance. He picks up the sheet, holding it as if it were a mildly interesting museum curiosity. He glances at the text, his eyes skimming the surface for less than 10 seconds. It is not the focused gaze of a man reading a legal document. It is the dismissive scan of someone who has already decided what it says. He sets the paper down and turns to Sterling with a condescending smile. "It's exactly as I anticipated, Alistair," he says, his voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. A standard ceremonial closing, a cultural formality. Maya's blood runs cold. She can see the words on the page even from across the room, the specific legal phrasing that is anything but ceremonial. "It's a poetic statement," Croft elaborates, puffing out his chest. "It speaks of honoring the heritage of our respective enterprises and building a partnership rooted in mutual respect. Standard practice in this part of the world." It's essentially the corporate equivalent of a handshake. He waves a dismissive hand. "You can proceed." Sterling's face floods with relief. This is the easy final step he was hoping for, a charming cultural quirk to cap off a successful negotiation. He turns to the prince, his smile broad and genuine. "A beautiful tradition, Your Highness. We are honored to partake in it." But the prince does not smile back. His face, which had been polite and reserved, becomes completely still. He looks at Julian Croft, his dark eyes flat and cold as polished stone. It is the look of a king who has just been handed a fool's trinket and been told it is gold. He makes eye contact with Mr. Adnan, a flicker of confirmation passing between them. The test has been administered, and the result is a catastrophic failure. Watching from the back of the room, Maya feels a wave of nausea. This is it. The point of no return. Croft's arrogance has doomed them. Sterling's ignorance has sealed their fate. Excellent, Sterling booms, oblivious to the silent judgment being passed on him. He picks up his expensive pen again, ready to sign the addendum himself. He gestures toward the document, an open, welcoming invitation to his own ruin. "Shall we conclude this historic moment?" he asks the prince, his voice full of a confidence that is about to be shattered. The prince does not move. He does not pick up his pen. His hand, resting on the table, is perfectly still. He looks at the addendum, then up at Sterling's beaming, expectant face. The silence in the room stretches, becoming thin and brittle. It is no longer the respectful quiet of a boardroom. It is the tense, suffocating silence of a courtroom awaiting a verdict. The trap is set. The bait has been taken. Sterling is holding the pen that will sign away his company's future, and he is smiling as he does it. The prince's gaze drifts for a moment, sweeping past Sterling, past Croft, and across the room as if searching for a single sign of competence, a single flicker of understanding in this house of mirrors. His eyes meet Maya's. It's only for a second, a fleeting, accidental connection. But in that second, something passes between them. He sees the silent, desperate plea in her eyes, the knowledge, the terror. He sees the truth. The prince's hand, which had been hovering near the document, slowly pulls back. The silence in the boardroom stretches into a thin, agonizing wire. Every person in the room is a statue in a tableau of corporate failure. Sterling's triumphant smile has curdled into a mask of confusion. His team shifts their weight, exchanging nervous, uncomprehending glances. The prince's hand remains withdrawn from the addendum, his face a granite cliff of unreadable judgment. He looks from Sterling's desperate face to Julian Croft's suddenly pale one. Then, in a voice that is quiet but carries the weight of absolute command, he speaks in English. "Mr. Croft," the prince says, his gaze pinning the translator to his chair. "You have assured us this document is a mere formality, a poetic statement, I believe you called it." Croft swallows, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "That is correct, Your Highness, a gesture of—" "Then you will have no trouble," the prince interrupts, his voice dropping a degree colder, reading the first line aloud for us. In Arabic. It is not a request, it is a command performance, and Julian Croft is a man who has forgotten all his lines. He stares at the page, the beautiful flowing script suddenly looking like an enemy code he cannot decipher. The seconds tick by, each one a hammer blow to his credibility. He begins, his voice thin and reedy. He attempts to sound out the first few words, but his pronunciation is a clumsy, mangled disaster. He stumbles, stops, and looks up, his face slick with the sweat of a man utterly and completely exposed. From her station at the back of the room, Maya watches the excruciating spectacle. She feels a cold, hard knot of certainty forming in her stomach. This is the moment, the culmination of every silent observation, every swallowed injustice. She closes her eyes for a single, fleeting second. She sees the face of the choking child. She hears the lie about the Bedouin dialect. She thinks of Alara Vance, the brilliant architect whose legacy was almost erased. She thinks of a lifetime of being told her place was in the shadows. When she opens her eyes, the fear is gone. In its place is a clarity so fierce it burns. She takes a single step forward. The soft scuff of her rubber-soled shoe on the marble floor is the only sound in the room. It is a quiet sound, but it is a sound of movement, of intention, and it breaks the spell. Every head turns. Sterling spins around, his confusion instantly igniting into pure, incandescent fury at the sight of her. The maid. Here. Now. "Williams," he hisses, his face contorting in disbelief. "What in the hell do you think you're doing? I gave you an order. Get out of this room. Security." His voice rises to a panicked shout on the last word, but Maya does not look at him. She does not flinch. She keeps her gaze fixed respectfully but directly on the prince. She has spent 4 years being invisible in Alistair Sterling's world. He has just become invisible in hers. She takes a deep, steadying breath. The years of silent study in dusty libraries, the nights spent tracing calligraphy until her fingers ached, the quiet, fierce pride in a knowledge she was never allowed to claim, it all rises in her now. Not as a shout, but as a clear, unwavering tide. She inclines her head slightly toward the prince, a gesture of profound respect. And then she speaks. She speaks in flawless, formal Najdi Arabic, the language of the royal court. Her voice is not loud, but it resonates with a perfect liquid clarity that fills the silent room. The accent is pure, the cadence is graceful, the authority is absolute. It is the voice of a scholar, not a servant. Samani ya Sahiba al-Sumo, she begins, the words flowing like water. Forgive me, your royal highness, for this interruption. Sterling freezes, his shout for security dying in his throat. Croft's jaw hangs open, his face a comical mask of disbelief. The prince's entire delegation leans forward, their expressions shifting from stoic reserve to utter astonishment. Maya gestures with a steady hand toward the document on the table. Hatha lesa iktitamen astaphalion, she continues, her voice unwavering. That is not a ceremonial closing. She pauses, letting the weight of her contradiction settle in the stunned air. And she delivers the final, devastating blow. Hu shart al-shafa, she states, naming the clause with its precise legal term. It is a right of first refusal clause linked directly to al-Thuraya's other sovereign assets in this region. She finally lifts her gaze from the prince and sweeps it across the room, meeting the shocked eyes of Sterling's team. She then translates her own words into cold, clear English. With all due respect, sirs, she says, her voice now ringing with a power no one in this room knew she possessed. It is a trap. The bomb has been detonated. The silence that follows is no longer tense. It is absolute. It is the sound of a world that has been turned completely, irrevocably, upside down. The maid has spoken, and nothing will ever be the same. The silence in the wake of Maya's declaration is a physical thing, a vacuum that sucks all the air and arrogance out of the room. For a moment, everyone is frozen, caught in the aftershock of a world turned on its axis. Julian Croft is the first to fracture. A choked, incredulous laugh escapes his lips. This is utterly absurd, he sputters, turning to Sterling with wild, desperate eyes. Alistair, are we really going to listen to this? She's a maid. She's probably a plant from a competitor, a corporate spy. He points a trembling finger at Maya. She has no authority, no credibility. This is a pathetic, transparent ploy. Sterling, his face a bloodless mask of shock, seems to want to believe him. It is the easier path, the one that allows his world to snap back into its proper order. He opens his mouth, ready to second Croft's outrage, to call for the security he had demanded just moments before. But before he can speak, the prince raises a hand. It is a small, calm gesture, but it carries the unassailable weight of authority. Croft's tirade withers into a pathetic silence. The prince does not look at Croft. He does not look at Sterling. His gaze is fixed entirely on Maya, and for the first time there is a flicker of something other than regal weariness in his eyes. It is respect. Tafadali, Anissa Maya, he says in calm, clear Arabic. Please, Miss Maya. He gestures to the addendum on the table. Ashrahi LNA. Explain it to us. He has given her the floor. In that single, quiet command, he has stripped Sterling of his power, dismissed Croft as an irrelevance, and elevated the invisible woman to the most important person in the room. Maya gives a small nod of acknowledgement. She walks from the back of the room to the head of the table, her movements deliberate and unhurried. The men in their $1,000 suits instinctively shift their chairs, making way for her. She picks up the single sheet of paper, the document Croft had dismissed as a poem. As I said, she begins, her voice even and strong, this is not a ceremonial document. This is a legally binding covenant known as Shart al-Shafa. She speaks the Arabic term with academic precision, then immediately provides the English translation for Sterling's team. The right of first refusal. She places the paper on the table and points to a specific line of calligraphy. Mr. Croft, she says, looking at him directly, her gaze cool and analytical, likely translated the word Tirath as heritage, assuming it was a cultural platitude. It is, Croft insists weakly. In a poem, perhaps, Maya counters without missing a beat. But in a legal document from the Gulf Cooperation Council, Tirath in this context refers to a portfolio of legacy assets. It's a technical term. She then turns her attention back to the prince and Sterling, becoming the professor in a masterclass no one knew they had enrolled in. The phrasing here, she says, tracing the elegant script with her finger, is deliberately ambiguous. It grants Al-Thuraya Global the right of first refusal not just on the sale of this hotel, but on any future hospitality or real estate venture undertaken by Sterling Grand or any of its majority partners within the GCC. She pauses, letting the implication land. It essentially gives the prince's fund veto power over Mr. Sterling's entire future growth in the Middle East. Sterling's face goes from pale to gray. He finally understands. Furthermore, Maya continues, her voice gaining momentum, the arbitration clause specifies that any disputes must be settled in a Sharia-based commercial tribunal in Riyadh, not a Western court. A Western judge might see ambiguity. A Saudi judge would see a clear and binding agreement based on established precedent. She looks directly at the prince. Your Highness, this language, this specific structure, it is the signature of the Khatani group, is it not? They used an almost identical clause in their hostile takeover of the Mandarin Imperial in Dubai last year. A murmur ripples through the prince's delegation. His lawyer, Mr. Adnan, nods grimly. The prince's expression hardens. He turns his devastatingly calm gaze to his legal counsel. Mr. Adnan. Her analysis, Your Highness, Adnan confirms in English, his voice resonating with respect, is not only correct, it is flawless. This addendum, if signed, would be a catastrophic liability for any company. The unmasking is complete. Julian Croft sits slumped in his chair, his face a ruin of his former arrogance. He is not just incompetent, he is a fraud who has been intellectually dismantled by the hotel's maid. The prince looks at Croft, and the last vestiges of politeness fall away from his voice. You are either a fool or a party to this deception, Mr. Croft, he says, his English sharp and cold. In either case, your services are no longer required. You will leave this room. Now, Croft stammers, speechless. He gathers his expensive briefcase, his hands shaking, and all but flees the boardroom, the heavy doors closing behind him with a soft, final thud. Throughout this entire exchange, Sterling has been silent, a statue carved from shock. He has watched the woman he threatened to fire, the woman he berated for being visible, save him from a ruin so complete he can barely comprehend its scale. He is no longer looking at the contract. He is no longer looking at the prince. His entire world has narrowed to the figure of Maya Williams. The simple gray uniform she wears seems to fade, to become transparent. He is no longer seeing a maid. He is seeing a brilliant strategist, a legal scholar, a cultural expert. For the first time, Alastair Sterling is truly seeing Maya, and in the face of her quiet, unassailable competence, he is finally seeing the depth of his own profound, staggering blindness. With Julian Croft's humiliating exit, a new kind of silence descends upon the boardroom. It is the quiet of a landscape irrevocably altered, the stillness that follows a seismic event. The remaining members of Sterling's team sit frozen, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. They are staring at Maya as if she has just performed an act of impossible magic, pulling not a rabbit from a hat, but their entire company from the jaws of a dragon. Alastair Sterling himself seems to have shrunk. The imposing, rigid posture is gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man who has just been confronted with the sheer, terrifying scale of his own ignorance. He is a king who has discovered his castle is built on sand, and the tide is coming in. The prince rises from his chair at the head of the table. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, his white thobe a stark contrast to the dark suits that surround him. He does not walk toward Sterling. He walks toward Maya. He stops a few feet from her, ignoring the vast, empty space that protocol and class would normally demand between a prince and a maid. He looks at her, his gaze taking in the simple gray uniform, the hands that have spent years scrubbing and polishing, and the clear, intelligent eyes that hold no trace of fear. He speaks to her in Arabic, his voice soft, intended only for her. Man Anti, he asks, who are you? It is the simplest of questions, yet it holds the weight of the entire morning. He is not asking for her name or her title. He is asking for the story that brought her to this moment. Maya meets his gaze, her posture straight, her dignity a quiet, unshakable force. She does not offer her resume, her forgotten degrees, or the long, painful history of being underestimated. She offers him her core belief, the truth that has guided her through every silent injustice. Ana Amrat Tumen Biana Alitaram hu aham band fi I eeked, she replies, her Arabic as fluid and natural as his own. I am a woman who believes respect is the most important clause in any contract. A slow, genuine smile spreads across the prince's face. It is the first unguarded expression of warmth he has shown since he arrived, and it transforms his stern, regal features. It is the smile of a man who has spent his life wading through oceans of flattery and has finally found a small, solid island of truth. He gives a small, appreciative nod. Then, he turns to face Alastair Sterling. He switches back to crisp, commanding English, his voice resonating with the absolute authority of a man who controls fortunes. "Mr. Sterling," he begins, his tone dangerously calm. "It has become abundantly clear that there has been a significant miscalculation regarding the capabilities of your staff." His gaze flickers for a moment to the empty chair where Croft had sat, then returns to Sterling's ashen face. "This deal," the prince continues, letting each word land with deliberate weight, "my $500 million investment in your company was contingent on a partnership of equals. It was contingent on a demonstration of global competence and cultural respect. Your team, I am sorry to say, has failed that test." Sterling flinches as if struck. He opens his mouth to offer an apology, an excuse, a desperate plea, but the prince holds up a hand, silencing him. "However," the prince says, his eyes now finding Maya again, "it appears you have one asset in this hotel whose value you have tragically failed to recognize." He gestures toward Maya. "Therefore, this deal will proceed on one condition, and let me be perfectly clear, Mr. Sterling. This condition is not negotiable." Sterling, a man accustomed to setting the terms for everyone, can only stand there, stripped of all leverage, and wait for his sentence. He gives a weak, jerky nod. "Anything, Your Highness." "Miss Williams," the prince declares, the name sounding like a royal decree in the silent room, "will act as the sole liaison and chief cultural consultant for this project, effective immediately." The shift in power is so swift, so absolute, it is almost violent. The room seems to tilt on its axis. "All official communications from my office will be directed to her, and only her," the prince continues, his terms like hammer blows. "The final negotiations on the revised addendum will be conducted with her. My team, Mr. Sterling, will deal with Miss Williams." He has not just promoted the maid. He has placed her above the owner. He has redrawn the map of power in his own image, placing the invisible woman at its very center. The prince turns his gaze back to Sterling, his eyebrows raised in a silent, final challenge. "You accept?" Alastair Sterling is trapped. The deal of his lifetime is on the table, but the price is his own public, profound humiliation. He has to anoint the woman he dismissed as his superior. He has to hand the keys to his kingdom to the servant he never even bothered to see. His jaw works silently. A battle rages in his eyes, pride against survival. Finally, survival wins. He turns his gaze to Maya. She stands there calm, poised, her expression unchanged. She does not look triumphant. She simply looks ready. Sterling swallows, the sound painfully loud in the still room. He gives a stiff, almost imperceptible nod. "Understood," he says, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. The aftermath of the reversal hangs in the air, thick and electric. The prince, having delivered his final, world-altering directive, gives Maya another respectful nod before he and the majority of his delegation are escorted from the room. A new energy follows them out. Sterling's frantic, desperate ambition is gone, replaced by the quiet, assured authority of the prince's command. Left behind in the boardroom are Sterling, his now useless executive team, the prince's hawk-faced lawyer Mr. Adnan, and Maya. She is still standing by the head of the table, a small, quiet figure in a simple gray uniform who has suddenly become the gravitational center of a $500 million deal. Mr. Adnan turns to her, his entire demeanor changed. The stern, impassive mask is gone, replaced by an expression of professional curiosity and respect. "Miss Williams," he says, his voice now devoid of its earlier adversarial tone, "His Highness has instructed me to remain behind to work with you directly. We will redraft the addendum to be mutually agreeable." He then looks at Sterling, who is still standing by his chair like a man in a trance. "Mr. Sterling, you are welcome to observe." The word hangs in the air, observe, not participate, not lead. Observe. It is a polite but brutal demotion, and it lands with the force of a physical blow. Sterling's team, taking their cue, begins to file silently out of the room. They avoid looking at Sterling, but they cannot stop themselves from looking at Maya, their expressions a cocktail of disbelief, awe, and perhaps a flicker of fear. The hierarchy they have served their entire careers has just been dismantled before their eyes. Ben appears at the door with a fresh tray. He walks not to Sterling, but to Maya. "I brought you some water, Miss Williams," he says quietly, "and a coffee. I figured you could use it." The Miss Williams is new, formal, laced with a reverence that borders on friendship. It is the first sign of the New World Order. "Thank you, Ben," she says with a small, grateful smile. As Ben leaves, Maya is left with Mr. Adnan and the silent, watching figure of Alastair Sterling. She looks at the obsidian table, at the high-backed leather chair at its head where the prince had sat. It is her chair now. She takes a breath, walks to it, and sits down. She is still in her uniform. The simple gray fabric is a stark, powerful contrast to the opulent setting. She does not look uncomfortable or out of place. She looks like she belongs. "Shall we begin, Mr. Adnan?" she asks, her voice calm and professional. For the next 2 hours, the boardroom, once Sterling's theater of power, becomes Maya's workshop of diplomacy. She does not negotiate with aggression or ego. She negotiates with a quiet, formidable intelligence that leaves both Adnan and the observing Sterling stunned. She starts not by tearing apart the old clause, but by acknowledging its intent. "I understand the need for security in a partnership of this scale," she begins, speaking to Adnan in a seamless mix of English and Arabic. "The risk of future competition is a valid concern. However, a poison pill benefits no one. A strong fence is better than a locked cage." She then proceeds to propose an entirely new framework. It's not just a revision, it's a reinvention. She suggests a mutual 5-year non-compete clause, but with specific, targeted exemptions for emerging markets that would benefit both Al-Thuria and Sterling Grand, demonstrating that she's thinking not just about defense, but about mutual growth. Sterling, watching from his seat along the wall, is mesmerized. He is listening to a woman he thought was, at best, a diligent cleaner, discuss the nuances of international contract law with more fluency and strategic insight than his entire legal department. She references precedents from Dubai, regulatory frameworks from Singapore, and cultural business practices that show a depth of knowledge that is not just learned, but lived. At one point, she turns to Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, your brand has a significant, untapped potential in the eco-luxury space. If I may suggest, we could build a clause around a joint venture for a sustainable resort project on the Red Sea. It would align with the Prince's Vision 2030 initiative and offer a far greater return than a simple hotel acquisition. It is a brilliant move. It transforms the negotiation from a zero-sum game into a collaborative enterprise." Mr. Adnan is visibly impressed, making copious notes. Sterling can only nod, his mind reeling. She hasn't just saved the deal. She has fundamentally improved it. She has found value where he and his team had never even bothered to look. The sting of his humiliation begins to fade, replaced by a strange and unfamiliar feeling. It is a dawning, grudging, and utterly profound sense of admiration. He is witnessing the unmasking of a genius he had kept hidden in plain sight, and the shame of his own blindness is absolute. Finally, they arrive at a new agreement. It is stronger, fairer, and more ambitious than the original. Mr. Adnan stands and reviews the handwritten notes they have made on a fresh copy of the addendum. He looks at Maya, his hawk-like features softened by a genuine smile. "Miss Williams," he says, extending his hand across the table, "it has been an honor. In my 30 years of practice, I have rarely encountered a negotiator with such skill, fairness, and strategic vision." Maya stands and shakes his hand, her grip firm and steady. "Thank you, Mr. Adnan. I believe we have built something strong." Sterling watches the handshake that closes the deal he had no part in making. He is a king in his own castle who has just been saved by the quietest member of his staff. The afterglow of Maya's victory is beginning to illuminate the entire room, casting long, deep shadows over his own authority. After Mr. Adnan departs, leaving the scent of a successfully brokered peace in his wake, Alastair Sterling and Maya Williams are left alone in the vast, silent boardroom. The revised contract sits in the center of the obsidian table, a testament to the new world they now inhabit. The silence between them is no longer tense, but heavy with the weight of everything that has been broken and everything that must now be rebuilt. Sterling does not speak at first. He walks to the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the sprawling city below, his kingdom, which he almost lost. He speaks to her reflection in the glass, his back still turned to her, a posture of profound vulnerability. "I have spent my entire career," he begins, his voice low and raspy, "believing that I saw everything. Market fluctuations, competitor weaknesses, the subtle tells of a bad investment. I prided myself on my vision." He turns from the window to face her directly. The arrogance is gone, replaced by a raw, hollowed-out look of a man who has been forced to confront a truth about himself he never wished to see. "And yet, I never saw you," he says. "You were right in front of me for 4 years, and I never saw you at all. I didn't just overlook your talent, Miss Williams. I actively and repeatedly dismissed your humanity. I judged you by your uniform, by your station, by the color of your skin. And that was not a failure of management. It was a failure of character. For that, I am truly and deeply sorry." The apology is not the slick, corporate version he offered the guest in the penthouse. It is stark, unadorned, and painfully sincere. Maya listens, her expression calm and steady. She offers no easy forgiveness, no placating smile. She simply allows his words to occupy the space between them to be heard. Sterling takes a step closer. "I cannot undo my blindness," he says, "but I can try to build something better in its place. I don't want you to be the hotel's liaison. I want you to be its visionary." He stops in front of the table, his hands resting on the back of a chair. "I am formally offering you the newly created position of Director of International Relations and Strategic Development for the Sterling Grand brand. You will have a permanent seat on the executive board, a full C-suite compensation package, a corporate apartment, and a budget to build your own team. Your office will be next to mine." He is offering her the world he knows, a world built of money, status, and proximity to power. It is a king's ransom, an attempt to fix a problem of dignity with the tools of wealth. Maya is silent for a long moment. She walks slowly to the table and runs her fingers along the edge of the newly drafted contract, the document that is a testament to her worth. "The money doesn't matter, Mr. Sterling," she says quietly, without looking up at him. "The office, the title, they're just bigger, more comfortable rooms. They don't change the foundation of the building." She finally lifts her gaze to meet his. It is not the gaze of a subordinate, but of an equal. "A new title for me doesn't change the lives of the 400 other people working in this hotel who you still don't see. The maids, the bellhops, the dishwashers, the ghosts who make this palace run while you and your guests sleep." Sterling looks taken aback. He had expected gratitude, perhaps some negotiation on the terms. He had not expected a rebuke. "I will accept your offer," Maya says, her voice gaining a new, formidable strength. "On one condition, the same way the prince had his." "Name it," Sterling says, his voice now laced with a desperate need to keep this new, brilliant version of his company alive. "You will publicly announce, fund, and implement a hotel-wide program that I will design and oversee," she declares. "We will call it the Dignity Initiative." She begins to lay out the terms, her vision clear and uncompromising. "It will provide full tuition reimbursement and education grants for all service-level staff. It will establish a clear, funded, and accelerated pathway for promotion from housekeeping, maintenance, and food service into management roles. It will require every single executive, yourself included, to spend 1 week a year working alongside the staff in those departments. And it will mandate a complete, third-party review of wages to ensure every employee is paid a living, thriving wage." She takes a breath, her eyes locked on his. "You don't just give me a seat at the table, Mr. Sterling. You agree to rebuild the entire house from the foundation up so that everyone has a chance to one day sit there. That is my price for staying." This is his reckoning. She is not asking for a favor. She is demanding a revolution. She is asking him to dismantle the very classist structure upon which his empire was built. It is a test far more profound than the prince's. The prince tested his competence. Maya is testing his soul. He looks at her quiet, unshakable strength, at the fierce, righteous fire in her eyes. He sees the path she is offering him. It is not just a way to keep her. It is a way to become a man worthy of the company she is trying to build. A long, heavy silence passes. Then he gives a single, decisive nod. "Done," he says. He walks around the table and extends his hand, not as a boss to a subordinate but as a partner. "We'll draft the announcement this afternoon." Maya takes his hand. Their handshake is firm, sealing not just a job offer but a new social contract. The afterglow of her victory has become a beacon, and it is beginning to illuminate a new path forward for everyone. 6 months later, the Sterling Grand breathes a different kind of air. The opulence is still there. The marble still gleams. The chandeliers still drip crystal light. But the soul of the hotel has changed. The silence in the lobby is no longer the heavy, oppressive quiet of a museum. It is a softer, more vibrant hush, punctuated by the murmur of genuine conversation and the occasional, unstifled laugh from a staff member. The hotel is no longer a cage. It is becoming a community. Maya Williams steps through the grand entrance, not from a service corridor but from the main driveway where a simple town car, not a limousine, has dropped her off. She wears a tailored navy blue suit, the fabric sharp and clean, her hair pulled back in a style that is both elegant and efficient. She carries a leather portfolio under one arm. She is the picture of a modern executive, a woman who belongs in this world not by birthright, but by sheer, undeniable merit. As she walks through the lobby, a transformation is evident. The concierge, a man who once looked straight through her, now greets her with a warm, respectful smile. "Good morning, Miss Williams. We have the preliminary reports from the Singapore expansion ready for you." "Thank you, David," she replies, her tone appreciative and familiar. "How is your daughter's recital preparation going?" He beams. "She's wonderful. Thank you for asking." This is the new currency of the Sterling Grand, small, human moments of recognition. The staff no longer moves like fearful automatons. They move with a sense of purpose, of being seen. On a digital display near the reception desk, a screen that once showed advertisements for the hotel's spa now scrolls through announcements for the Dignity Initiative. Congratulations to our latest education grant recipients. And enrollment for the Service to Management Bridge program is now open. Maya pauses, a quiet sense of pride warming her chest. The initiative is real. It is working. She sees the proof everywhere she looks, and then she sees him. He is standing near the main staircase, the same spot where she was once stationed to polish the railing, a ghost in the background. But he is not polishing anything. He is speaking to a new bellhop, his posture confident, his tone encouraging. He is wearing a crisp, dark suit, the uniform of a manager in training. It's Ben. He looks different. The nervous energy is gone, replaced by a calm, steady competence. He stands taller. His smile, once shy and fleeting, is now open and assured. He sees Maya and his face lights up. He excuses himself from the trainee and walks over to her, his stride purposeful. "Miss Williams," he says, his voice full of a gratitude that is so sincere it's almost overwhelming. "Ben," she replies, her own smile genuine. "Or should I say Mr. Rodriguez?" He flushes slightly, a hint of the old, nervous Ben returning. "Not yet. Another 6 months, but I just wanted to say thank you. I don't think I've ever said it properly." "You have nothing to thank me for," Maya says gently. "You earned your spot." "No," he insists, shaking his head. "You opened the door. The bridge program, my mom cries every time I tell her about my classes. I'm the first person in my family to be on a corporate track. The first one, too." He trails off, the emotion of it all catching in his throat. "You didn't just give us a program, Miss Williams. You gave us a chance to believe we were worth more than our uniforms." Maya's heart swells. This is the true profit of the last 6 months, a return on an investment that could never be measured in dollars. "You were always worth more than your uniform, Ben," she says softly. "You just needed to be in a place that was willing to see it. You were the first person in this entire hotel who really saw me. You have good eyes. That's what makes a great leader." As she turns to head toward the executive elevators, the ones that once carried her fate up to the penthouse, she pauses and looks back at him. "Just remember one thing, Ben," she says, her voice carrying the quiet weight of a legacy being passed on. "Hold the door open for the next person who comes along." Ben looks at her, and in his eyes, she sees that he understands completely. He is the first echo of her revolution. He watches as she walks away, a woman who once cleaned the floors of this palace and now helps to run it. He sees her step into the elevator, the doors closing on a future she built not just for herself, but for all of them. Then he turns. He sees an elderly couple struggling with their luggage near the main entrance. Without a moment's hesitation, Ben hurries over, his new, confident smile already in place. "Welcome to the Sterling Grand," he says, reaching for their bags. "Let me help you with that." He holds the grand glass door open for them, a small act of service but a profound gesture of a promise being kept. The echo is already turning into a chorus. The sun is setting. From her office on the 82nd floor, Maya has a panoramic view of the city as it begins to glitter under a twilight sky of bruised purple and soft gold. The relentless, striving energy of the metropolis below seems calmer from this height, the chaos transformed into a beautiful, intricate pattern of light. Her office is not the cold, sterile box of glass and chrome that Sterling once inhabited. It is a space filled with warmth and texture. The walls are a soft cream, there are orchids on the windowsill, and one wall is covered in a large framed map of the world, dotted with small pins marking the hometowns of the hotel's employees. Maya sits at her wide walnut desk, the day's work finished. The last of her reports are signed, the last of her emails answered. But she lingers, not out of obligation, but because she has come to love this quiet time at the end of the day, this moment of reflection. On the corner of her desk, next to a sleek, modern laptop and a photograph of her, Ben, and a beaming Sterling at the Dignity Initiative's one-year anniversary, sits a small, unassuming object, her old Arabic dictionary. The cover is soft and worn from years of use, the corners frayed, the spine held together with a piece of clear tape. It is a relic from another life, a life of silent study and hidden dreams. It is the book that held the knowledge that changed everything. She runs her fingers over the faded gold lettering on the cover, a faint smile on her lips. It is a reminder of where she came from, and a testament to the fact that the most powerful things in the world are often the ones that are overlooked. She thinks of the woman she was a year ago, the ghost in the gray uniform, polishing the anger and entitlement of the wealthy until it shone. She remembers the terror of stepping forward in that boardroom, the feeling of her voice, so long silenced, finally breaking free. She had been fighting for a deal, for a principle, for her own dignity. She hadn't realized at the time that she was also fighting for Ben, and for David the concierge, and for the countless others who had been made to feel invisible. A soft, timid knock comes at her door. It is so quiet she almost doesn't hear it. It is the knock of someone who is not sure they are allowed to be here, someone who is expecting to be turned away. "Come in," Maya calls, her voice warm. The door opens slowly, and a young woman in a gray housekeeping uniform steps hesitantly into the room. She is barely 20, her dark hair pulled back in a tight, practical bun. She holds her hands clasped in front of her, her knuckles white. Maya recognizes her from the morning shift on the 3rd floor. Her name is Sophia. "Excuse me, Miss Williams," Sophia says, her voice a nervous whisper. Her English is good, but accented with the soft, melodic cadence of Spanish. "I am so sorry to bother you. They said you were finished for the day, but It's no bother at all, Sophia," Maya says, standing and coming around from behind the fortress of her desk. The simple act immediately closes the distance between them, erasing the built-in hierarchy of the room. "What can I do for you?" Sophia's eyes dart around the beautiful office, a space so far removed from her world of cleaning carts and industrial solvents. I heard about the grants," she says, her gaze finally meeting Maya's. "The education grants from the Dignity Initiative. My friend Maria in the kitchen, she is taking classes at the community college. She said you were the one to talk to." "I am," Maya says, her smile encouraging. "What are you hoping to study?" The young woman's face lights up with a fragile, fierce hope. "I want to be a nurse," she says, the words tumbling out now. "Back in my village, my abuela, my grandmother, she was the healer. She knew all the herbs. She delivered all the babies. I was always with her. I learned to be gentle, to care. I want to do that here. I want to go to nursing school." She stops, suddenly embarrassed by her own passion. "But it is very expensive." Maya listens, and in Sophia's story she hears the echo of her own. The quiet ambition, the dream that seems too big for the world she currently occupies, the fear that she will be trapped forever by her circumstances. She looks at this young woman, at the intelligence in her eyes, at the strength in her hands, and she sees not a maid, but a healer waiting for a door to open. Maya turns and gestures to the plush leather chair opposite her desk, the one where Mr. Adnan had sat, the one where billionaires and executives decided the fate of the world. It is a seat of power, a symbol of a world Sophia has only ever been allowed to clean. Sophia, Maya says, her voice soft but clear, carrying the weight of a promise that was made to her and that she is now passing on. Come in. Sit down. She smiles, a genuine, radiant smile that reaches her eyes. Let's talk about your future.